He himself has over 20 years of experience in Baker Hughes, in which he has held senior management positions in, let me see here, operational, sales, marketing, technical, and business management roles, actually in multiple locations globally. His current role is that he leads the geothermal segment for Baker Hughes, encompassing both subsurface and surface solution. I'm honored to call him a partner and to sit down and interview him today. Help me welcome Mr. Vice President of Geothermal at Baker Hughes, Ajit Menon. Welcome to virtual seminar number 6, Ajit.
Hi, glad to be here. This is my first time.
It's your first time at the virtual seminar, but it's not the first time you and I meet.
Oh, no, no, of course not.
We
Yes.
can call
We
ourselves
are
partner,
part
and I actually know which
as
team you vote for.
yeah, as you said, we are partners and we know each other well now, I think.
I'm happy, but I haven't had the time to sit down and talk to you. And I think that you have a very interesting story, and Baker Hughes as a company is also a very compelling and interesting organization that I would like. All the viewers and to listen into and learn from, because I think that you have a lot of experience that we can take with us.
Sure.
Let's start immediately. I wanted to talk to you about the future of energy. Baker Hughes is a big company. You have 180,000 employees all over the world. What kind of energy are you guys talking about?
Well, I think when you look at the future of energy, and it's not just, you know, a Baker Hughes perspective, but it's what we need in the world is energy that's clean, but also with a reliability of supply at a competitive cost to the consumer. Now, this energy resource, and it was interesting to hear Paul prior to this, also needs to be an investment that's attractive to developers. And that means it needs to have reasonable risk profiles and returns. It's also not one source of energy. It's going to be a mix of different energy resources that's required to meet these types of goals that actually are interconnected and support each other. So that's what we see as a future of energy.
Where are we today on a scale from 1 to 10, and what do we need to do to get into a 10?
I would say, yeah, and I would say we're at a five. That would be my view, right? We've come some way from what's actually been done. I think from an opportunity perspective, we're actually much higher. We're actually at an eight. And the thing that we can do right now to get there is accelerate our efforts to develop and grow energy resources like geothermal energy because it has the potential to actually meet all of the criteria I described in coordination with efforts to reduce the development costs involved with geothermal and reduce the uncertainty levels when going into a geothermal investment.
Hmm. Can you elaborate a little bit on accelerating effort?
Well, I think when you look at the environment today from a climate and from an energy security perspective, unfortunately, in some way, there has never been a better time to leverage geothermal and to actually deploy geothermal at scale. But we have to accelerate efforts because today, Paul had mentioned how permitting is a big challenge, and everyone talks about how we're going to improve that, how there's legislation coming to improve these things. But we need to move from talk to actual legislation that's actually implemented to accelerate these efforts. At the same time, like organizations like Baker Hughes, we need to accelerate our efforts to develop and apply technology that can help us meet these challenges. It's going to be a collective uh, effort that is driven by not just the technology developers, but also the policymakers, also the uh, community at large, and public institutions working together. We all know and we can all talk about, at length the advantages of geothermal energy. But we need to start deploying geothermal energy on a much greater scale, because the reality is today it's a very small portion of the total renewables market.
Hmm. What do you think? You're mentioning collaboration. What do you think is the role of collaboration in developing clean energy and also for geothermal?
Well, as I said, we can't do the things we just mentioned, and certainly not in the timeframes that we need to, without collaboration. And this is not just collaboration between, say, a project developer and a technology developer, but also with government who actually institute policy, the community at large who need, in many cases, to give their approval to these developments, and public institutions. And this will support new technology development with funding, with an ability to get approvals to do pilot testing, as well as deployment and project approvals. And these all involve different parties, right, in a coordinated effort to do this. And we need to accelerate the timeframes. Today, it can take 3 to 5 years to do the things I've mentioned. We need to be doing them in less than a year.
How do we come about that? How do we go from 5 years to one?
Partnerships is one. Uh, Commitments that are backed up with the resources to actually execute on those commitments is another, right? It's not a complicated answer, and it's not very like thought provoking, but it's actually quite simple.
I agree with you, but on a scale again, we go back trying to make it concrete. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are we in collaborations within the geothermal community today?
Uh, I think to be honest with you, I think we're starting on that journey, really, right? So on the positive side, I think I see a lot more collaboration starting to happen, but it is new, right? Like we each existed in our own silos and did our own thing for a long time. But I think it's really changed and it's really improving.
What do you think people are scared of when it comes to collaborations?
You know, I'm not sure if scared is the word. I think in many cases people don't understand how to go about it. They don't have the kind of, as your chairman mentioned, the channels or contacts to actually start this collaboration. And business often isn't set up that way, right? So I don't know if scared is the right word, right?
Huh, interesting. If we look a little bit at Baker Hughes in a sense, what part do you want to play in the geothermal industry moving ahead?
I think, Baker Hughes is an energy technology company. That's our core strength. And we can play a valuable role in with the deployment and application of technology that helps us address and I've said this quite a few times, and people who've listened to me before may have heard the same words, but they're true. Address the critical challenges that we have in geothermal, which are reducing cost, reducing uncertainty and risk, and that's where we can play our role, and in collaboration with the wider industry, with our customers, government, and the community to grow geothermal at scale. Because unless we do that, it's always going to be a small niche source of energy.
What do you consider the challenges of our industry being?
Well, as I said, and when we look at it from our perspective, if you have a clean source of energy that is available at a competitive cost to the consumer, that makes sense for investors, it's a no-brainer for investment, it will sell itself, right? To get there, you do have to address those challenges, which we do have, which is bringing down the cost. And when we talk at it from a technology perspective, as Paul mentioned, that's in many ways an ability to drill wells faster, to drill wells deeper, and to actually institute process that allows you to make fewer mistakes supported by technology, address uncertainty by making sure that we reduce the chances of dry wells in the geothermal development through a better understanding of the subsurface, uh, and better, more reliable tools that mean the project's completed on time, and risk, right? And risk, while is partly addressed by what I said, it's also addressed by being able to shorten and compress the time scale of a geothermal development, which can take 5 to 7 years, which is a very long time for an energy project when you compare with other alternatives. How do we do that? Uh, you know, Efficiency is one. The other is better connection of the subsurface and surface. That's something we focus on in Baker Hughes because we participate in both uh, parts of that geothermal value chain, both on the subsurface in well construction and also in the surface in terms of surface equipment. So connecting those better, whether we do it ourselves or with others, I feel is very important to reduce those time frames and then the risk of a geothermal project.
Do you consider the world having different challenges when it comes to geothermal? I'm just thinking like US has one challenge, Europe has another challenge, Asia has another one. Are there big differences or are we looking at the same?
I think if I step it back a bit, I think when we talk about challenges of the world, rather from just geography, I look at it, in the sense that in some parts of the world, the Western world, we're looking at moving from one source of energy to another and how we do that without, disrupting the consumer. But in a lot of places, simple access to affordable energy
Hmm.
is a way to get to the same sort of living standards that exist today in the West. And if we don't address that, we will fail because climate change really has no boundaries, and therefore we need to look at new markets for the deployment of geothermal energy in ways that are cheap and cost effective. In fact, we need to unshackle geothermal energy from its geographic restrictions. And how do you do that? Well, one way is through technology, the development of closed loop systems that a number of parties are doing that helps you extend geothermal geographically to places where you may not have reservoir, but where you have heat, which is just about everywhere. Another way to unshackle the restrictions on geothermal energy is to even convert it to a different form of clean energy that is actually transportable. And in this way, you can help address the challenges of other parts of the world that either don't have geothermal resource or have geothermal resource, but nowhere to deploy it to.
Hmm. Interesting. I mean, all of these are very important, but also, if I put it like that, a bit uncomfortable conversations that are needed to be had in order to increase development for geothermal, but also, I mean, for the sake of the climate, in a sense. What, who should be responsible for leading this conversation?
I think I think we all have to be responsible for leading this conversation. The geothermal industry itself, nobody else is going to do this for us, right? And I hope that we will, and that we will seize the moment that we have today, which we won't likely see again, right? To grow geothermal at scale and institutionalize its use and not actually play the victim, right? So,
Yeah. I was listening to you at the EGC when you said, I quote, it's not rocket science, it's rock science, right?
yes, and while that sounds funny, it's actually really true in the sense that nothing we're talking about is has a huge technological barrier associated with it. It can be done. It's a matter of leveraging the capabilities we've developed over, over more than 100 years in understanding the earth, right? And a lot of that capability comes from the oil and gas industry. And we need to be open to leveraging that capability, whether that be in understanding the subsurface and actually the well construction process and other things.
Hmm. Thank you. On that note, we're moving to a more positive note. Like, what are your hopes for the industry?
Well, again, I just said it that we seize this moment because today you've had the climate change challenge, which has resonated, which has resulted in governments actually doing something. But you also have the energy security crisis, which is impacts people in real time, right? When suddenly they either don't have energy or it costs them twice as much to obtain that energy.
Mm.
And that is a real immediate concern. And it's usually those immediate concerns that drive real change. So my hope, and I'm convinced we will and can do it, is that we seize this moment. Because geothermal energy is not just about uh, providing power, but it's also about heating and cooling, which is a significant, uh, like uh, part of our energy landscape in terms of the energy we use, and a significant part of the emissions picture. And doing that is actually very achievable over the short term. So I'm very hopeful that we will do this. We see lots of engagement, whether it be with developers, with governments, with public institutions. So it certainly seems very different today compared to how it's been. So I'm very positive and very optimistic on that.
As a summary here, what message would Baker Hughes and you want to send to the industry? What would you say to all the developers, investors, management companies who are watching you now?
I would say, just like you, we are laser focused on addressing the energy transition and ready to work together so we can realize the power and the potential of the power beneath our feet. And we accept everyone and just like you at face value that we're all in our own way trying to do the right thing.
Thank you very much, Ajit. I will meet you again, and so will the audience when we go back to the pioneering panel debate, which I very much look forward to. But thank you for giving us inspiration. And what you're talking about really shows that the geothermal industry has everything going for it right now to make a significant change in the energy sector.